Good afternoon, guys. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to log in here. So it's just going to be another minute or so, and we'll get started. I hope everybody is having a good day and enjoyed their Memorial Day weekend. Today, we're going to be talking about some ways to increase social motivation and what social motivation even is. How do we identify that kind of stuff? And how do we find ways that will make us more valuable to our little ones who don't seem to really want to engage as much? So that's going to be the basis of what we talk about mostly today. Some of the stuff that I talk about will be based in applied behavior analysis. But the cool thing about ABA is that it is something that works with everyone. It's not just specifically for children with autism. So some of the stuff that we talk about will be based in ABA, but I will explain kind of how it's used and how you can use it anywhere. I'm going to just go ahead and get started. I know some people are still joining, but I'm going to go ahead and start now. So today we are going to be talking about increasing social motivation. My name is Kristen Blow. I am a board certified behavior analyst. And we're going to start off with talking about just what is motivation in general. And we know that motivation is basically what drives the value of a stimulus and controls behavior. What is it that drives us to do things every day? Those are the things that motivate us. And those things are called motivating operations. When we look at things that are motivating us, we also have to look at the establishing operation and the abolishing operation, because the establishing operation is what's going to strengthen the value of that stimulus, where the abolishing operation is going to be what weakens that value of the stimulus. So food, for example, if you are hungry, then food is going to be an establishing operation because you're hungry, so you want to go get the food. If you are full and you've just eaten, food is not going to be that motivating to you because you have already eaten, you don't need that. So that is an abolishing operation. So when we're looking at what is motivating our learners, we need to look at the whole picture, at the environment. What is it that they're trying to engage in? What is it that is motivating them to engage in these different activities and tasks? And have they already had what is motivating them? Because if they did, or if they're already engaging in it, then their motivation to go and do something else is going to be low. So social motivation is actually the human need to interact with other humans and to be accepted by them. It's the idea that people in general have a motivation to engage with other people and to interact with other people. We know that when we are first starting out learning, some of the first things that we learn are things from our parents, from our siblings, from those that we're around. As we start to go to school, we learn things from our peers, even as adults, interacting with our coworkers. These are all different things that we use as social motivation. We want to make sure that we're doing well, that we're making our boss happy, that we're making our parents proud as we're growing up. These are things that we care about that drive our social motivation. And so what we know is that a lot of kids with autism or with developmental delays may not really have that social motivation. Their primary motivator is not really going to be social acceptance, or what is it that other people are thinking about me, or how can I make other people happy, because they lack some of the understanding of how to actually interact socially. But social motivation is the drive for learning, achievement, and a lot of choices that we make in life. We make our life choices a lot of times by what it feels good, what is going to make those others that are around us proud of us, what is going to make other people look at us in kind of a better light. So these are things that we think about daily when we're interacting with other people. But if you lack social motivation, then that's not really going to be your focus. So there is something out there that's called the social motivation model. And what that is it basically states that social deficits and autism are a consequence of reduced social motivation, and it starts early in life, and it has profound developmental consequences. Sometimes it can lead to isolation. You're not making as many friends because you're not really interacting with others, or you don't really understand how others move or why they do certain things. So it's hard for you to relate to them. And so that's kind of what happens when we look at individuals with autism and how they interact with others. So the one thing that we always want to remember is that like social motivation is strongly influenced by your learning history, by your learning styles, by internal and external incentives, and the expectations of success or failure with particular tasks. So if a child knows that when they typically engage in a task, they are successful at it, they're going to be more likely and more willing to engage in those tasks. If the task that is being presented to them is something that they relate with failure, then they're more than likely going to try to avoid that. So when we're looking at how to socially motivate our learners, we want to make sure that we're looking at what are things that they already know, what are things that they're successful in, and things that they are interested in that we can use to keep them going. So the other thing that the social motivation model talks about is how all this lack of social interaction, it can lead to impaired sociocognitive development. And it lists a couple of things that are most affected. And one of the things is the theory of mind, which is the ability to understand that other people think differently than we do, or to be able to guess what others are thinking or feeling, being able to read social cues, being able to look at somebody's face and tell, are they happy? Are they excited? What I did just now, did that upset them? Did it make them happy? These are things that our kids with developmental delays may be missing because they can't really read those social cues and they don't understand how other people think. So when they look at things, they see the world through just their eyes. Exactly the way that they feel and the way that they understand things is kind of where it is for them. It's very hard for them to look at another person's point of view or perspective. So we have to keep that in mind when we're teaching our younger kids and trying to get them to interact with us. It can show an impairment in imitation skills. So that's the ability to observe and copy the behavior of their peers. So we notice that a lot, they're not really paying attention to their peers. They might see what their peers are doing, but they're not really going to copy what they're doing. So sometimes what's really good to work on these skills are to either assign them a peer model, or if you have a child who finds other peers to be quite aversive at this time, then you can also do video modeling. That's been a great thing where you may have a typical peer to model what it is that you would like this other child to do, and you will videotape that and you will show them this recording, and you will have them practice what's in the recording. Because one thing that we also know is that a lot of children on the spectrum, a lot of kids with developmental delays, they do like videos. They are visual learners. And so these video models can help them to see what it is that you're wanting them to do, to be able to start building on those imitation skills, but it also doesn't overwhelm them with having so many people around or having people telling them exactly what it is that they should be doing. You might also see an impairment in play skills, which are the ability to engage meaningfully with same age peers in age appropriate games that require collaboration or shared creative thinking. You'll see a lot of times, even though they may come near the peers, you might see a lot more of parallel play where they are playing beside them rather than with them. And you might notice that if you try to get them to engage in these group games where there's turn taking involved, when there's winning and losing, you might see some inappropriate behaviors come out during those times because, again, they're not really understanding the play skills. Sometimes they don't understand how to take turns. They don't understand that there's only one person who wins sometimes, so that can be something that is difficult for them. So when we're looking at play skills, and where they are developmentally in their play, we are going to want to break down each play skill and kind of make it almost a task analysis to be able to teach them how to play. And you're always going to start off with parallel play, because sometimes we have kids who won't even go near other kids. They will only play by themselves in one corner. So you're going to want to just even shape their proximity to other children before trying to get them to just engage and play with them. And then, as we've talked about previously, a lot of kids with autism or developmental delays have impaired communication skills. And that's their ability to use appropriate verbal and nonverbal language to communicate their wants, needs, and ideas. So as I've stated in previous trainings, building communication is going to lead to being able to teach so many other skills, because communication is the key way that we all interact with each other, whether it be verbally or non-verbally. Anybody that you cross paths with, that you interact with, you are communicating in some way. Even if you're just walking down the street and you smile at the person who was walking in the same direction, that right there is still communication. And so the thing is that a lot of times our kids will lack this, or if somebody speaks to them and they don't see the need to speak back, they may not respond. So for others, that may come off as rude, but for them, they just didn't see what was the purpose in speaking back at that very moment. So sometimes we have to train things down to simply greetings and how to say goodbye. So we're going to want to look at all of those different things when we're looking at how to increase social motivation. And so one of the first things that I always have everyone do whenever we're working with a new child, if we are meeting a new family, and sometimes even if it seems that we have been working with the child for a while, but all of a sudden it seems like maybe they are backing away from us and they're not wanting to be with us as often, I always suggest working on pairing. Pairing is one of the first things that we do in ABA anytime that we meet a new child. And so I'm gonna have us watch a video on that really quickly.
Now I want to talk to you guys about one of the most important teaching procedures in an ABA program. That's called pairing and building instructional control. Pairing is essentially the process by which we establish ourselves as really reinforcing people. What we want our kids to know is when we walk into a room, work or demands. Another really important part that comes with pairing is building instructional control. And what essentially that means is we want to be the most fun person in the room for our kids while also being the person that stays consistent across all areas of learning. Pairing ourselves as reinforcers and establishing instructional control are two of the most important teaching procedures in an ABA program. Basically, we want to be the most effective teachers for our kids, and that also includes parents.
Okay, that was the first time I did a video. Were you all able to see the video when I shared it? Yes, okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry, that was the first time I shared a video and I didn't know it told me to share a different screen. So back to pairing. So pairing is basically just using, I cannot. Okay, so pairing is using high reinforcers to condition people, materials, and environments to become reinforcing. So what we're doing is we are taking what they are really enjoying and we are pairing ourselves with that, or we are pairing a less motivating thing with what is super motivating for them. So if you have a child, a lot of times I always start off with the simple fact of when we are trying to teach prerequisite skills for learning, we look at getting a child to sit at a table or a desk. That's kind of the one thing that we always, is the first thing that we want to do. And a lot of times kids don't want to just come over and sit at a table because they look at that as doing work. So I always pair the table with fun things. If I have a kid who I know loves Play-Doh, I have Play-Doh sitting out on the table. If I have a child who I know loves Teletubbies or Peppa Pig or whatever, I might play a video at the table. And all we're doing the first couple times that they come to that table are watching those videos or playing those games, playing with those reinforcers. I am presenting nothing that is of high demand at that time until we have paired that table with our reinforcing things. And so for when you're talking about increasing social motivation, we are pairing ourselves or pairing other people with the most reinforcing things that these children have. So when I go to a child's home for the first time, I always bring what I call my bag of goodies. Every time I come, I have the treats that I know they like, the toys that I know they like, and we're spending those first couple of sessions just playing together and interacting together in those items and activities that they enjoy, because that builds a trust between them and I. And it also lets them know that I'm not just here to place demands. I'm not coming in to ruin your day. I am somebody who comes in and gives good things. I am of value and I am reinforcing. And so that's what we really want to make sure that we're driving home when we're teaching social motivation and when we're trying to increase motivation. So here I've put kind of the different 5 steps to pairing. One is play. You're going to find out what they enjoy and you're going to play with them. If it's that sometimes you might bring things and they might want to play with them, but they don't want you anywhere near them while they play, and that's okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to allow them to have that activity and play, and you're going to let them play by themselves. And then you're going to slowly move yourself closer and closer until you're able to engage with them while they're playing. You're going to want to do preference assessments. That's a great way to see what is it that motivates your child. What are they really into? Sometimes you have kids where right out the gate, you know exactly what it is that they like. Maybe their parents were able to tell you, or they have all their favorite things right there. But for some kids, it might be hard to identify what their reinforcers are or what their motivating things are. So doing a preference assessment is a great way where you can just give them 2 different options and you kind of collect data on what it is that they like to engage in most often. Then you're going to reinforce. So you're going to use preferred reinforcers, and you're going to use novel reinforcers that you can incorporate with them. So here now you're taking this novel item and you're pairing it with their reinforcer, and now this is making this novel item more motivating, and it's giving it more importance to them. You always want to make learning fun. So I always stay away from the word work. I never said like, let's go to the table and do work. I always go for something like table time, or just calling it what it is. We're going to go have math time at the table. We're going to go do reading. So I just try to stay away from the word work and try to make it seem like whatever we're doing is going to be reinforcing. And then again, never stop pairing. So you should be pairing with your kids every session, every class, every time you see them. There should be something that you're doing that is continuing to make you a reinforcer for that child. You want them to be excited when they see you. I have seen instances where a specific person will come into a therapy session and a child cries. Or I had a client who every time I rang the doorbell, it was come on in. And that's how he was with every therapist. But then after a while, there was one therapist where when she would ring the doorbell, he would tell her not to come in. And that was because she was no longer pairing with him. She was no longer making herself reinforcing. So when she came, he automatically knew that he was going to have to do work. He wasn't having as much fun. And so that's where it's really important to make sure that we are looking at what is motivating for them. Because if they're not engaging with us and they're not motivated by us, it's going to be really hard for us to be able to teach and share with them. The next thing that I want to talk about is joint attention. That is another thing that is really important when you're looking at increasing social motivation. And I have another video here. I hope it works just as well.
Why is joint attention so important?
Responding to joint attention is when your child follows your lead and attends to the same thing as you do. For example, if you say, "Look," and point to a ball, your child should look in the direction you're pointing. This is how your child demonstrates joint attention. Joint attention allows your child to learn from others and to share enjoyment with others. Initiating joint attention is your child's ability to use their gaze, gestures, pointing, sounds, and words to draw your attention to an object or event. Your child will look at the object of interest and then back at you to learn and share enjoyment. An example is when your child looks up to the sky and points to an airplane, and then looks back at you and back to the airplane passing by. If your child looks at you to share enjoyment or to see if you are watching them, this is called social referencing. Joint attention is an important milestone for social development, as your child is showing interest in not only objects, but people and their reactions. Children with autism spectrum disorder are delayed in displaying joint attention. At 2 months of age, infants display joint attention by taking turns exchanging looks, noises, and mouth movements. At 6 months, children look in the same direction as others and follow your gaze. At 8 months, infants demonstrate pointing. At 9 months, infants demonstrate gestures and social referencing. Your 1-year-old child will point intentionally to show interest. At 12 to 14 months, your child will start to direct your attention by pointing and then look back at you.
So that video talks about joint attention. I don't want that to start. And joint attention is when two people share interests in an object or an event, and it's achieved when one individual alerts another to an object by means of eye gazing, pointing, or other verbal or nonverbal indications. When we talk about joint attention, we look at it in two different ways. We look at it as responding to a bid for joint attention and being able to initiate joint attention. And so when we are looking at how we can kind of train joint attention, there's a couple of different things that we're going to look at. And the importance of making sure that your child engages in joint attention is because if they are not able to share any enjoyment with another person, then it's going to be really hard to increase their social motivation. It's going to be really hard for them to want to be around others and want to engage with others if they don't know how to really share their enjoyment in things with others. So the first thing that we're going to do when looking at increasing joint attention is we're going to want to imitate what the child is doing. If they are interacting with a toy on the floor, we're going to get down on the floor with them. We may not be able to immediately go ahead and start touching the toy or playing with the toy, because that's going to be individualized by the learner and how comfortable they are with people interacting with them. But you want to make sure that you're always kind of down at eye level with them, and that you are making sure that they're comfortable. So if you are too close and they seem to be scooting away, then we know, okay, then I'm going to stay back here, but I'm still going to be down here, and I might comment on what they're playing with. I might just point at what they're playing with, just to show them that I am interested in what it is that they have and what it is that they're doing. You're always going to want to find something that is motivating to the child. It's really fun. A lot of times bubbles are a great way. I don't think I've ever met a child who doesn't love bubbles. Play-Doh, anything that you can do that you can start interacting with on your own and maybe have a separate set on the side for them to interact with is a great way, because if they come over and start to play with that, that's great. And then as they're able to do that, you can maybe shape it down to where there's just one set. So now we're having to share this set and we're sharing and playing this together. And you're always going to want to kind of just comment on what it is that you're doing. Make sure you can, reinforce them for how they're playing. I love the way you're building those blocks. Look at how you pop those bubbles. I love how you put the shape in the box. These are all great ways to work on that. And then you're going to always want to reinforce proximity. As I stated, some kids are not going to want you anywhere near them starting off. So every time they get a little bit closer, we're going to want to reinforce that. You can only still see the video? Okay, hold on and let me see if I can fix that. Thank you for letting me know. Can you see the PowerPoint now? Okay, perfect. Thank you for letting me know that. Oh, let me get back. So we're looking at reinforcing the proximity. So anytime that they get close to us, we're going to want to make sure that we are just reinforcing how well it is that they're playing. And we're not necessarily going to say, oh, look at how close you're getting, or thank you so much for coming closer. You know, it's just every time they get closer, we're going to just give them some form of reinforcement. If you're playing bubbles and you're blowing bubbles and they get really close to you, you might blow a whole bunch of bubbles that time. Just little things like that. And then you're going to gradually increase the expected level of engagement. So as you're able to reinforce them and they're consistently coming over and they're consistently playing, now you're going to maybe only reinforce when they're sitting right next to you and playing. You're going to only reinforce when they are sharing something with you. So you're going to look at where they're at and you're going to gradually want to increase that level of expectation. If you move too quickly, we could lose them and they could lose interest in being with us. And so we want to make sure that we don't do anything too quickly. You also want to gradually increase the amount of time that the child is engaged. I have done some sessions where I literally want the child to just sit with me for 2 seconds because that is all that I know that they can tolerate being around me. So it's going to depend on the learner again, and you're going to just gradually increase that amount of time. I spent, one child that I worked with, we spent 3 months, the first 3 months of our therapy with him sitting in mom's lap. And it started off with him just allowing me to come close to him and mom, him allowing me to come sit on the couch, him allowing me to touch the toy. So by the time he left mom's lap and was coming to sit anywhere near me to play, it was like, oh, 5 seconds, great job, 10 seconds, great job. And we shaped it just that slowly, because anytime that he was away from her too long, but with me too long, he would start to get anxious and you could see it in his behavior. So we used a visual timer and we set very clear expectations for how long we were going to play. And eventually it got to the point where we didn't need a timer and he wanted to come sit and play, and we just allowed him to play for as long as he wanted. And then you're going to want to increase the variety of activities that the child engages in. If they have a broader variety of activities that they are willing to engage in and that they find motivating, it is going to be easier to get them to engage with other kids and with other adults at any time, because they're going to have a larger variety of things that will interest them. So it won't just be that they will only go play if you have the Play-Doh. Now they'll come and play if you have blocks, if you have crayons, if you have bubbles, they'll come play at any of those times when initially maybe it was only Play-Doh that they wanted. So this is something that you're going to shape slowly again, and that you're going to use pairing with. So if Play-Doh is the main thing that they enjoy, then we're going to start bringing blocks in with the Play-Doh, and we might flatten the Play-Doh out and stick a block in it, or maybe I'll hide a block in the Play-Doh. These are all ways that are pairing new activities, but also sharing engagement. If I hide a block in Play-Doh, now I'm pairing the block with Play-Doh, but I'm also having you engage with me to find out where is the hidden block. So these are things that we want to look at, because we want to make sure that we're giving them new things to do, but we're keeping with what they already love, and that we are making sure that they're still interacting with us during that time, because just giving them a toy to go play with is great. And yeah, we were good for a second for the reinforcement of getting the toy, but now they're back to playing by themselves. So we just want to make sure that whatever we do, we're interacting with them during that time. And sometimes it's just going to be sitting with them. Sometimes it's just going to be looking at them and waiting for them to look back at us and reinforcing that eye contact. That's typically where it all starts, is with eye contact. I know a lot of our kids do not have that ability at first to make that eye contact. They may avoid making eye contact, and that is okay. The one thing that I see happen a lot, that I try to steer away from, is when you have children who don't necessarily make eye contact. I have seen oftentimes people who will wave their face in front of the child's face or try to kind of force that eye contact. And the reason that I try to avoid that is because at that point, eventually what happens is this child is actively trying to not look at you, when what we want them to do is to actively look at you. So ways to increase eye contact would be to have reinforcers around. I do this a lot with fruit snacks during snack time. I'll do it with toys. So if they want something, if they want this pen, I'm going to say, oh, pen, and look at them. And when they look at me, they get the pen. So really, you're going to do the same thing. You're pairing that reinforcement with eye gazing. And so that's kind of how you're going to teach all that: eye gazing, pointing, gestures, all of that kind of stuff. You don't really want to force it, because then what we get is that they are actively avoiding doing what it is that we would like them to engage in. So we want to make sure that we're adding a reinforcer to anything new that we're teaching. So some other things to work on increasing social motivation are just getting to know the learner. What is it that they really enjoy? Keep a running list of stuff that they love, stuff that might be a trigger for them, because you want to make sure that you're avoiding their triggers and you're really building in and building up on what it is that they're interested in. How do they best learn? Are they visual learners? Do they need to have separate times? Do they need 5 minutes of where we're learning and 5 minutes on their own? Are they able to sit for 10 minutes? Where are they at? You need to look at that before you start making plans, because you can make a great plan that could backfire because it's not really geared toward this specific learner. And again, what is their level of learning? So you're wanting to make sure you look at their level of learning, because any task that you're pairing, any task that you're asking them to engage in, you want to make sure that it is appropriate for where they're at and it's not too hard or likely to trigger anything. You want to look at your environment. It's best to work on social motivation in the natural environment. So you're going to want to kind of be where they are. You're going to want to engage in their natural play space. The one thing that we know is that teaching social motivation and teaching play and turn taking and all that is best done when you are doing it in their natural environment. And you can do this while they're playing. You can do this during daily routines, especially turn taking kind of stuff. You can do it during breakfast or when they're getting dressed, anything like that. If they're getting dressed or if you're eating breakfast, it could be, oh, here, it's my turn to give you one. Now it's your turn. And just simple little things like that, so that they are engaging with you at all times. You want to kind of let them know that interacting socially is for more than play, but teaching them through play is the best way. So you're going to start off with play, and then you're going to start moving it into other areas of their daily life. You want to make sure that there's consistency with each individual that works with the learner. You want to make sure that everybody is encouraging them every time they do anything independently, anytime they make any kind of initiation, when they respond. You want to make sure that everybody knows that this is something that we're working on and that we are reinforcing them when they do these things. Because the more we reinforce them, the more likely they are to do it. When a child plays peekaboo, every time you act surprised when they come out, they're going to do it more and more. If they say peekaboo and you stop reacting, they're done. They don't want to do it anymore. So we just need to look at it in the way of the more that we interact with them, the more that we make them feel like everything that they're doing is awesome, the more likely they are to continue to work with us, and the easier it'll be to shape their different behaviors. And then you want to make ways to make sure that you're keeping the environmental distractions low. You don't want them to be bored, but you also don't want them to be overstimulated. So making sure whatever environment they're in when you're teaching is not overstimulating. For some kids, you may need to pull them out of the classroom to work on different games. Maybe you bring one peer with them. I've had a child before who within the full classroom, it would get way too loud and he was super distracted, and just sensory, all the sounds were a lot for him. So I would allow him to pick one peer, and we would go to a different room with their sets of toys, and we would work on playing and gaining attention and sharing attention and all of that in a separate room, and then bring them back in. Because once those things are learned, it's going to be easier for him to be able to engage within that classroom. But while trying to learn how to interact, it was just a lot for him. And then you're always going to want to increase positive language when you're interacting with them. We want to make sure that we are always, not that we're always the good guy, because sometimes we are going to have to correct things, and we are going to have to, tell them when maybe they are wrong. But we want to make sure that when we're teaching these skills and when we're working on social motivation, that we are using positive language, that we are kind of steering away from negative language. So even if we're having to correct them during these times, rather than telling them like, no, that's wrong, or don't do that, we're going to want to look at saying maybe try again, or just telling them exactly what it is that they should be doing rather than what they should not be doing. So if we are playing with a peer and they are throwing blocks at the peer, rather than saying, no, we don't throw blocks at our peers, we might say, hey, try again. We build with blocks. We can hand a block to our friend. We can make a tower with blocks. So you're going to give them all this positive ways that they can interact with blocks. And so you're then correcting the behavior, but still giving them positive feedback. And I think that's really important when we're teaching anything, and with any learner that we're working with, whether they be neurotypical, whether they have developmental delays. I think that making sure that we are really kind of steering towards using more positive language is always going to be better, because it's going to keep that rapport that we have going, and it's going to make them feel like, okay, even though they might have done something wrong, they're not in fear of being wrong. And that is something that we see a lot, are kids who are in fear of being wrong because of the way that they've been reprimanded. So if we can just kind of more interact with them on the basis of this is what you should be doing, rather than don't do this, it builds our relationship, and it gives them a more positive view of themselves as well as others around them and how they interact with others. So just to wrap up, is there anybody that can think of any ways that you currently work on increasing social motivation in your home, in your classroom, just ways that you can share with others that might be helpful? No, anybody? So I like to do different play sessions in different play areas where I actually rotate the kids and who they're with. And I do this very strategically. My kids who may be more outspoken, who really enjoy doing a lot of things, kids who like to be the teacher, things like that, I might pair them with some kids who are less motivated to be around others, who may not like to play as much. And so I put them together as pairs and kind of work with them each on their own ways. So I might have my outgoing peer sit with my peer who is not so outgoing, and I'm going to let them work together. And I'm going to have that first peer just show them all the cool things that they can do, all the fun things they like to do. And I might prompt them to ask certain questions, or prompt them to show them how to do something. And that's what's really cool about having a peer model around, is that you can kind of get them to do what you would like them to do. So it's kind of like, even though I am the one leading it, they're actually having to interact with a peer during this time. And a lot of times I'll have the friend ask, and then the student who should respond is looking at me, and I just remind them like, oh, your friend asked you, let's answer them. And it kind of gives them a way to build and talk with their peers without as much pressure, because I'm there to help, but I'm also not their main point of contact. And then does anybody have any ideas for moving forward, anything that they might start to implement that they're not already doing, or any questions about stuff? Yes, that's a great way. Having kids bring in things from their home and talk about it. Show and tell. a great way to have kids interact with each other and a great way to practice speaking with others. And it's fun because it's something that they love and something that they want to share. I believe that teaching online right now is super hard. And I know it's a lot harder to increase that social engagement and that motivation while we're online. Some things that I've seen people doing are they'll even play videos from their phones on this side, or they have their toys that they're using. I've seen a lot of puppets being done and things like that to try to get the kids to stay, because it is harder to get them engaged with you when you're not right there. At first, I think they're really excited about the fact that, like, oh, you're in the camera, you know, but then after a while, that excitement wears off and it's a little bit harder to keep them engaged. So kudos to all of you who are doing the online teaching. It is not an easy feat. Does anybody have any questions at this time? Things that I didn't cover, or maybe I didn't explain well enough? Okay, thank you. So, well, then I'm gonna kind of go ahead and wrap it up. Tomorrow I will be on again at 3:00 talking about how to expand play, kind of what is play, what are age appropriate play skills, and how can we expand on these play skills that our kids may already have or that they are not currently exhibiting. I thank you guys so much for joining me. I look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow. You will receive an email that will have a link for the survey in it. If you need a certificate, fill out the survey. And once you do, I will get your certificate to you within 48 hours. Zoom does send out the email with the link in it, so you will receive the email tomorrow. If you do not receive the email by sometime tomorrow, please reach out and let us know so that we can get that fixed for you guys. Thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to talking to you guys again later. Everyone have a great afternoon. Thanks.